Hi Lana, welcome to CLTV podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing really well, Shashank. Thank you for having me on your podcast. I'm very excited to talk to people about my passion. Right now, I am a career coach, but I started working in science and engineering, and I have since worked in many different industries like entertainment technology and business technology. I was able to get myself out of those situations over and over and over again, and now I help people do the same thing for them. What is a good successful career and what is a bad failing career?
So, what exactly is the purpose of networking according to you?
And the one word to describe: crucial, crucial, and crucial. Number one, interview is a two-way conversation. Two, know something about the company. Treat them as a client with you being the service provider. Four, maintain eye contact. I cannot say this enough. And finally, trust your gut and know your worth. Hi, I'm Lana. I'm a career coach with Two Steps Forward Consulting, a coaching company that I started about 5 years ago. I am a business and technology professional. I've worked in many different places. And the one thing I've always loved about any job that I've had were the people that were there with me. I've had all kinds of challenges in my career, and I can see that other people are having the same challenges. And I've made it my mission to support them, to support all the folks like yourselves to get to where you're trying to go.
Hi Lana, welcome to CLTV podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing really well, Shashank. Thank you for having me on your podcast. I'm very excited to talk to people about my passion.
Amazing, amazing. First of all, thank you so much for accepting my invite and coming over and educate us on your area of work. So, I really appreciate your time today, and I'm sure I'm gonna learn a lot of career related information from you. So, before we get deeper, I wanted to understand what made you get into the career coaching business.
So that's really an excellent question. And I love to share my story with people, even though it can come off as a bit lengthy. Right now, I am a career coach, but I started working in science and engineering. And I have since worked in many different industries like entertainment technology and business technology. Throughout all of my jobs, and even the things that I did during my sabbaticals in between those jobs, I paid special attention to the people themselves, to the team's dynamics, how people function when they come together, the different processes that are put in place to make people thrive, and also how people just behaved in different circumstances. And I found that I'm actually much more drawn to the individuals doing the work than the subject matter of the project itself. And I model everything after myself. I've experienced a lot of challenges in my career. There were many points in time where I wasn't happy or I didn't know where things were going. And that made me very frustrated. And I was able to get myself out of those situations over and over and over again. And now I help people do the same thing for them.
Amazing. So you've been through some struggles in your career, and you've learned a lot of stuff in that process, and you're educating people like me and others who you're getting coached by you, and then you're ensuring that they travel to the right career path. So having said that, so what are those values you're going to add? Let's say if someone comes to you and asks you, Lana, give me a good career path. How are you gonna take them through, and what exactly is this good career path according to you?
All right. So that's usually what people come to me with. They say that there is a problem, they don't know what to do about it. And the struggle is actually to define, to come up with a very definition of what is a good successful career and what is a bad failing career. So the first thing I would actually talk to that person about is whether they're looking for a quick fix or they want to take this journey. And the journey is to get to know themselves all over again, because it's probably been quite a few years since you've gotten really to think about who you are and where you're trying to go with your professional direction. Usually people think a lot about that during university time. not so much throughout university, more so just right at the end when they have to be applying for jobs. And then there's particular points in life where you really have a chance to think about it. But chances are, if you are somewhere in your mid to late 30s, maybe beginning of your 40s, you're just not the same person anymore. You have a lot of commitments, you have a lot of responsibilities. And the first thing I would want to know is, are you looking for a quick fix? If you're looking for a quick fix, you should 100% go work for a competitor of whatever company you're working for right now. You should look at all the companies that exist in your existing industry and maybe the last industry that you've been in. This is, you press for money, you're taking care of your family, you're taking care of a lot of different things for yourself and people that you love. You may not be in a position to take off and go on this big journey and find out what your values are as a fully formed adult at this point with everything that you've learned. You have to incorporate that and add it to who you thought you were when you first entered the job market.
Having said that, but there are certain situations where we go through, and let's say if I've assumed certain things were good until I come to mid career, and all of a sudden things change in that time. How do you think we can handle it? But I'll give you I'll come up with the best example. For example, in current day and time, artificial intelligence is replacing or has full potential to replace a lot of jobs, repetitive tasks, for example. So let's say if I've been trying all through my career to in certain path, and suddenly that career path becomes obsolete, there is no more need, it's redundant. Okay, so in those situations, how do you think one can handle him or herself and still thrive even in those challenging situations, according to you?
So every single one of us is incredibly complex. People are not machines that just happen to be alive. A human being has an incredibly complex skill set. And the older you get, the more there's interactions between different things and things build on top of each other. You also now have evidence of having done a number of different things. So you start to have much less fear and hesitation for getting out there and not seeing your career as a single profession. You see this happen all around. People have to reinvent themselves after layoffs. People have to switch direction after they get really disappointed with a particular experience at a company. This happens all the time, and it's really been normalized. There used to be this concept of a pivot. I mean, it still exists, but there used to be a very particular, almost like, oh, you're so brave. This is so unusual. We're rooting for you, like go, go, almost like you're trying to compete in the Olympics kind of feel to it. But now it's become really normalized. So when I work with people, I usually like to really dive deep and examine everything that they've done, whether they were successful, as in not just whether there were results from applying certain skills, but did you have a good time doing it? And do you think this is sustainable for you? And first, you look at the past and you encounter a lot of different situations. You look through them and you say, okay, I want to have more of this, or maybe I want to have much less of that, or never ever encounter a particular situation again. Then you look at the present. You look at the skills that very recently you picked up. You look at a person's new interests, because the person you were before is not the person you are right now. And so the first part of this process is like divergent thinking. At first, you put everything on the table, and it's almost like you have too many options all of a sudden. So the trick to that is to follow it by calling the options down to what is practical for you in a financial sense, what is right for you and your family, thereby reducing it to a number of viable options. So I like to go with 2 or 3 new career directions. And usually they're not all that drastically different from what you're already doing. There are sister industries, there are relevant job titles, something where the gap is actually not that quite large. You still need to apply effort to get there, but it doesn't seem all that impossible to get there. And at that point, I try to remind people that you don't have to commit to any one of these options and think this is the rest of your life now. You may have to repeat this process over and over again, except that you probably won't need to do this whole investigation all over. You will just have to kind of tweak and add additional little options that you find, maybe course correct, that there's always that going on. I think somewhere in midlife and mid-career, once you really get to know yourself again, this is the second part of your life, you know? You're probably going to be pretty stable with who you are and what your interests are for at least another 5 to 10 years. So you probably won't have to repeat dig such a deep hole the second time around. But there should be an expectation of having to adjust to the market that is changing. The
Hmm.
technology is changing very rapidly. There are things happening in the job market because of the economic situation that we find ourselves in. Sometimes the market is tougher and sometimes it's easier. And sometimes there's this fear of automation. And by the way, this is not the first time that people have been concerned for the
Yeah.
rapid change in terms of job automation. This is one of those times where it's very prominent, but it's not the first time it's ever happened in society. And
Hmm.
so we always feared that all the jobs all of a sudden will disappear. But the reality, and this has been the case before, is that this is simply not the case. You
True.
should be concerned, but you should not think of it as the end of the world.
Got it. From what you've said, I've understood that you need to understand what are your strengths and what is the capabilities you have, and then chart and then filter out the best out of it, and see where you stand in current state of market, and then approach it with certain plan. That's how I listen to it. Am I right?
That is absolutely correct. You look at who
Okay.
you are, who you know yourself to be, plus maybe we will, if you work with somebody who's guiding you through the process, you may discover some additional things you overlooked, but you
Hmm.
get to know your strength, variety of strengths in hard skills, also in soft skills, in technology, computer skills,
Hmm.
maybe some other aspects that I'm not even thinking about right now. I usually put a lot of focus on transferable skills. And those are the skills that you can pick up in different parts of your life. They could come from parenthood. They can come from being in sports. They can come from the involvement with the military. Maybe leadership. You're running a club. Maybe you are cooking up a storm at home and actually catering some cultural event. Sometimes we take really large steps towards something, and what we need to do is take a look at what that means. You don't have to take it literally. Just because you cooked for your church, that doesn't mean you have to become a chef all of a sudden. But you showed that you can be responsible. You made a promise and you stuck with it. You accurately understood the task. You prepared, so there was logistic, there was planning. There were different aspects to that. Those skills are very transferable. That's a project management skill set right there, maybe minus some specific software that you will have to pick up along the way. So what I'm trying to say by that is you get to be very creative in trying to find all the sources, paid things you've done, unpaid things you've done. Anytime people relied on you, anytime you made a promise and then you carried through and delivered on that promise, anytime people relied on you for something, and you put all of that together and you start to look at, with this level of responsibility, where can I apply myself? And yeah, then you go from there. You come up with options. You probably reduce the options a little bit, and
Hmm.
you look at what's actually left. What is that gap between where I already am? And by the way, all this work, the preliminary work is done to make sure that you understand that you're much closer to this
Hmm.
option, to this industry and this profession and this title that you thought you were. And then we just look at specific gaps, and this is where the strategy part kicks in. The strategy is just plan. It's a sequential plan with probably pretty realistic timelines. Do you have to take a course to close this gap? Do you have to find somebody in your or mine or maybe somebody else's network to actually let you know what your everyday will be like once you
Hmm.
get that new job? Because sometimes we have these rosy glasses on. We have this very romanticized version of what this new job could be like. I've always thought I might try this. And now Lana is
Hmm.
telling me that I'm actually not that far from this option. Okay, so I'm going to go there and it's going to be amazing and it's going to solve all my problems. And I'm going to feel that deep sense of self-actualization. The very top of the Maslow's pyramid of needs is self-actualization when you are in service to your community, to society, you're making a difference in the world. And then what I tried to do is, not to throw a wrench in the bicycle, not to rain on the parade, but I tried to bring people down a notch and say, don't get carried away. You haven't gotten there yet. First of all, we're
Hmm.
still just writing the strategy. It's a viable option the way I see it. I'm not in your head. So I am not subject to your hesitations, but I'm also not a subject to your romanticizing the situation. So let me find you somebody to talk to. Let's talk to somebody. It could be a senior person, it could be a manager, it could even be an intermediate, it doesn't have to be a junior, but there's a wide range of people you may speak with, as long as they're good at communicating
Hmm.
and very realistically can tell you what an everyday in that new job would be like. Because what, is this actually good for you? Is this
Got
good
it.
for your mental health to leave a set of problems behind and enter a brand new set of problems that are arguably worse? So
Hmm.
that's kind of how it happens. At first we enter the realm of possibility, narrow down the options, and then make it as realistic as possible so that you are as informed as you can be when you're making that decision. Because this is the biggest pet peeve that I have in life is anytime you make a decision and then later you have regrets, while you could have taken maybe one or two extra steps to really think this through, get that information you're missing, talk to somebody, and have them bring you down to earth and say, realistically, this is what you're choosing. Just if you go in it, fantastic, go in it, but go with full knowledge, or at
Correct.
least as much as you can find to make that informed decision.
Awesome. So I'm able to understand two major things. One, you need to understand yourself first, and then you need to understand where you're going. For that, you need to speak to people or learn about it and do some research and get into it. Then you'll understand what are the gaps, and then you try to fix those gaps by different strategies as you suggested. So well, that's about something which I want to take a change into. How about some let's say if I'm just someone who just goes to office at around 8:30 a.m., comes have my lunch at around 12:30 p.m. and come back home, watch some TV, play with kids, and again go back to office the next day. Someone who has very monotonous job, who's just treading along some through their career. What would you suggest to people, like, let's say if someone like that comes up to you and says, Lana, I'm getting, this is how I'm living, do you think I'm doing the right thing or wrong thing? And what are the questions you would ask them to understand what are their capabilities and what they can achieve? Or the same thing, like, how are you going to put mirror in front of them? What is your strategy for that?
That's a great question. So first thing I'm going to say, since you brought up this type of work, and maybe there's a monotonous as a label associated with it. So there are people who need that stability in their life. They're absolutely fine with that type of working. And it's not necessarily that they have so much going on at home that they need the work part of the life to be very simple. It's just a different way of thinking and a different way of being. And for those of us that need more change and more excitement, and we also perceived a certain way by the people that need more stability. They perceive us as more risky, and we don't necessarily think of it that way. So if you choose to have that way of working, you've made the choices to bring maybe higher level of stability than people around you would understand. That is totally fine. So the type of things that the people in very stable jobs with a long-term goal come to me for is normally dissatisfaction with the speed at which they're being recognized, the speed at which they are making the way through the hierarchy at work. They want to level up. They want to take on more responsibility. They may not be seen or feeling not seen, and they may not be given more sophisticated things to do. And that has more to do with advocating for yourself than anything else. So I will definitely speak to all sorts of people because everybody is unique and their situation is unique. And if this is the case for the person that I'm speaking with, I need to know a little bit more about the dynamic at that job. So first of all, tell me about yourself, tell me about your job, tell me about your role, tell me how long it took you to get there, what is it that you do currently, and then we talk about, are you satisfied with where you are at right now? If we're speaking, you're probably not 100% satisfied and you're looking to change something. So that idea that there's change, it's always present. The reason you seek out a career coach is because you're trying to make some kind of change, except that your change here has to be done within the container of your existing situation. There will, of course, be limits to that. We need to talk about the relationship you have with your immediate supervisor. How comfortable are you giving honest feedback and asking for things that you think you deserve? Maybe you've tried that before. Maybe there is just no way to get through to them. So, of course, two heads are better than one. And together we can come up with different things that you can do in that situation. Even if you've already had that conversation, maybe it's worth it to book another conversation and try a different approach. You need to know yourself, what is it that you're hoping to accomplish? Because walking into that conversation with somebody who could give you an opportunity, maybe reassign you to a project, they need to know what is it that you're asking. Like, you can tell me that you're not satisfied, but we need to actually determine what is it that you're going to be asking. Are you asking to, for sort of like, maybe permission is the wrong word, but for support, because you're going to practice your public speaking. You want to share knowledge. You want to be seen as be somebody whose name is at the tip of people's tongues. So in that case, you could pitch the idea, and people, like, let's say you're a manager, if you give me extra work to do and say, "Oh, give me something, like, use me more," that's more work for me to do. At the end of the day, I would like to have a suggestion. Like, a person comes to me and says, "Okay, Lana, I'm your direct report, and I would like to dabble in XYZ." And I would actually be very grateful, because I know specifically what you're asking and we can discuss. And if I don't think that that activity that you are asking me to support you in is actually really necessary or possible for this department or for this company, then I can come up with some alternatives. But it's really, really good to give this person, maybe your manager, maybe a senior person on the team, like a peer, but more senior, give them a starting point of what is it that you think you should be doing. And if you don't know what you think you should be doing, that's when you talk to a person like me, because we can go through options. The way you can be seen is, I already mentioned, is you can put on some lunch and learns. You can ask to be a second or third presenter on a particular presentation that is already scheduled. You can record some how-to videos. There's a lot of ways of sharing knowledge. For example, you could be asking to be put on a different project, something more sophisticated, to give you a chance to really show off everything that you can do. Maybe you've taken a new course on a side, whether it's sponsored by a company or not, but now you're saying, "Hey, remember me? I can do more now. Can you put me to work doing this thing?" At the bottom of all of this is the concept that, if you don't ask, nothing is going to happen. Of course, maybe there is that situation, but it's more rare than anything, where, your manager is sitting there thinking, who else can be developed? And if they're a good manager, they will be looking for opportunities to develop everybody. But you shouldn't assume that this is going to happen. And in some companies, it's actually pretty clear that nobody's going to help you develop. You have to take ownership of that and take steps yourself. If you're going to do that and not ask for ideas, but instead come and volunteer these ideas, you need to understand the situation that the company is in. So whatever knowledge you have that you can bring me, I keep it 100% confidential. You may be talking about, "Okay, I heard there was a message from upper leadership that the next
Mhm.
year the focus is going to be on ABC, and maybe our department didn't quite interpret it and make it easy for us to determine how I should be showing myself off and my skill set. So, I can help you interpret that in terms of, like, what you personally can do." So
Got it.
basically, I am here to do what your manager hasn't already done, or help you prepare for that conversation.
Yeah, got it. So, okay. So this is how I'm looking at, what I've heard from what you have said is, treat your boss like your customer, right? So, wherein which, you understand, you make sure that you cater to his or her requirement for their objectives, and for that you have to have this enthusiasm within you, and that comes to the genuinity within you. You'll be enthusiastic if you're genuine, generally, right? That's why I'm listening to what you just said. So, treating your boss like your customer would enable us, as you said, we'll be able to give right suggestions at right time, and that would keep us in, that pedestal where we are chosen for certain things to happen at the right time, because that's what, everyone wants to have a smooth, show. And obviously, if you are doing these things in that way, So you're enabling that to show to run smoother. Amazing. Lana, I've got a question where this keeps happening to me. For example, let's say if I'm talking about a fresher who is freshly out of university. Most of the cases kids know what they wanted to do because that's what they have chosen, right? But by the time they complete the graduation, they end up changing themselves, right? Because they might have guessed, okay, this particular course or this particular bachelor's degree has something in it, and they go through it and they understand, okay, this is not something I'm looking for. So this takes me back to my own life way back when I've graduated, where in which there was always a conflict between doing what I love versus loving what I do. So where do you think an employee's or a person's success lies in these two scenarios? And then please elaborate it to the mid career as well, from the beginning to the mid career. Thank you.
Great question. I really do think that this is important because there are so many people that I've spoken with over the past 5 years that found themselves in that situation and they've struggled to make sense with it. They went in one direction when choosing the degree or diploma to pursue. They already may have had some thoughts and doubts and uncertainties graduating. They may have stuck the course and actually tried to get that first job there, realized that maybe that is not for them, and then made their first switch. And chances are you've made the switch many times since then. So we should talk about the difference between, pursuing your passion and coming to love what you do without the need to constantly chase something. So the way I think about this is it all really depends on how you want to live your life and what is important to you. If you think that you should absolutely love what you're doing at every single point, well, first of all, you're going to be a little disappointed because things are not very rosy, at least not rosy every single moment of every single day. So maybe in your first, second job, you're just getting used to the reality of having to go to work and then dealing with situations that you didn't quite think were going to come up. And your expectations change. At that point, it already starts to change for you because you start to doubt. But maybe you've decided that, you know what, that's fine. I've become humbled a little bit, but I still love what I do because it's important and there's a meaning to it. And that's okay. If you're the kind of person that defines success by always doing whatever you love this moment, this year, this decade, then that's fine. You're going to end up making a switch because you will live, you will learn, let's say you work at a company that takes on different types of projects, and then you get to know one of the projects, and then you actually want to cross to the other side and say, okay, this company got me to the subject matter that I now love, and now I'm going to go pursue that. That's not very unusual. That's what a lot of people do. In engineering companies, some people hop the fence and go work for the supplier because they've now discovered a branch away from the first or second, third job into the next one, and that's totally okay. Now, if your personality is such that you practice gratitude and you want to be more mindful and appreciate what you have, and you really don't want to be chasing the next shiny thing because that's actually stressful for you, then yeah, you should stay. Maybe you will still feel the need to really think about what you could be doing, but at least you're going to give it a much longer shot than the first type of person. And that is totally okay too. So personally, I'm a job hopper in the tech industry. The normal term of being at one job in the tech industry is about 2 years because you pick up so many new skills. And if you're not getting rewarded at your company, you start looking at competitors, and starting a new job with new expectations and where you are now means that you can ask for much more money as opposed to staying put and waiting for that raise that may never come. But there are some professions in which you actually need to stay much longer in order to really get to know what's going on, in order to really make a difference. And that's okay too. So the best way to answer this question is both ways are valid. And if you define success by doing what I love and loving what I do, those two things can exist at the same time, then so be it. If you define your success by being recognized and rewarded, then you are just working with different rules. You have a different objective, and a single job isn't really gonna get you there. chances are you're going to have 3, 4, 5, 6 different things lined up. Maybe you do them out of order, but you always have your goal on the price. And so success is not universal in its definition. Everybody has some understanding of success,
Hmm.
right? But the sooner you realize that it's not attached to your first field and your first job and your first title and whatever path you think you were going to be on, there's no straight path, by the way. There's no perfect circle in nature. There's no straight line in nature. These things are hypothetical constructs. Perfection does not exist. And it's very difficult to navigate the world that is cross-functional, where there is, like teaching used to be just pure teaching. You stand
Yeah.
and you lecture, and now there's technology involved,
Yeah.
right? And medicine, and then there's some other aspects involved. Like every field now has combination of so many different things that there really is a high chance that you will learn something that takes you in the new direction.
Got it. Okay. This so what's happening here is, let's say you're looking at the, is it like, am I supposed to follow the sense of satisfaction, and then, because as you said, success is subjective to each person, right? So so should I be looking at the sense of satisfaction I'm getting in doing certain things? You understand what I mean?
I do.
If I am satisfied doing what I'm doing, I guess that's what is successful for me. Then, do you agree with this statement?
I do agree with that statement. I think it has to do with your values, and not just the professional values in how you can be of use to your community, to the particular company, to the society. It has to do with what you value in life, and you need to work backwards from that. If your idea of being a good person is to be a good husband, to be a provider for your family, you also need to combine that with what type of things you like doing for work. And it's a combination of things. It's a balancing act. You know what I mean? So you have things, let's say you can do, as a person, your skill set allows you to do 5 different things. And you have 5 different potential jobs you can have, but not all of them satisfy your personal values or your requirements for living a good life. So it's like a grid, you try to work out different things you can do. And as an adult, you can do different things. The choice within that, you have to always go back to your values. Your values are really all we have. And whatever jobs get you to where you're going, to your goals, and allow you to live in accordance to your values. If income and having a high income right now is a way to get you to your goals, then maybe your next job needs to be that. Doesn't mean that you should do something absolutely irrelevant, but it may make you sacrifice some of that. Oh, I need to love what I do. Maybe you need to take it down a notch. Do something that you can reasonably do well and not hate yourself doing it, but you have a bigger objective, much more important thing in life that is there right now, and it could be making a big dent in your mortgage. So it's a combination of life values and work values. It's very difficult to advise somebody when you don't have a full picture. Like we said, it's so custom and it's so unique that I really need people to know that there is no one rule. There is no one advice that's going to fit everybody. Some people absolutely do not care about money. They will live in a van and travel and not wash, but they will do that one exotic job that they cannot do anywhere else, and that is their life's purpose. If that's not your life's purpose, don't follow that path. And that's why I connect people with somebody to speak with, so that you really get to understand. And at that point, you think they're making sacrifices, but to them, it actually doesn't feel like sacrifices at all. That's the way they live their life. That's their best life for them, right? When you're doing this right, and when you accurately balancing your work needs and your personal needs, you will not feel like you're making too many sacrifices. There will be unpleasant things you have to do. There will be not ideal things you have to do, but you will be able to say that, every time I do soul searching, I always come back with, no, this is the right thing. And that's because you're living according to your values and not
Yeah.
chasing something that somebody else said.
Amazing, amazing. So what I've understood now is like, you have to first understand yourself before we derive anything about success or satisfaction. So the better you understand yourself, then you will be able to derive your own values, which would lead you to the metrics of satisfaction. Then if the checklist is met, then of course you would call yourself successful, because again, success is something which is self self-marked as well as marked by others also, right? Because you are setting up your goals. If you are reaching those goals, you are successful according to yourself, but for others you are super successful. Who knows? That's a whole different. Amazing, amazing. So that was the the multi-dimensional thought process about career, Lana, all these questions so far. So let's get into the technical detailing of the questions now. So I'll ask you pretty simple question, like what do you think a resume must consist of? Please explain to me the beginner resume, the intermediate, and the mid-career resume, and if you can take me to the executive resume as well. So someone just challenged me yesterday that I have to come out with resume where I put whole of my experience in one page, and I've got many decades of, not many decades, I've got at least decade plus half decade experience. So how do you think I can achieve?
Okay, let's talk about resumes. This is one of my favorite topics because a lot of the time, this is where the conversation starts before you go into deeper topics about should you be doing this in the first place. For a lot of people, that's when they reach out to the coach. And so I've written a lot of resumes for people and I've advised on a lot of resumes. So let me tell you what are some basics. First of all, a resume is a marketing document. It is a way to get person's interest hooked. It's a balance between everything you can be and the job that they're trying to fill, because they have their own needs when they put up the job listing, and you can't just throw everything, your whole identity at them and say, please figure out yourselves how you're going to use me. That's a really bad thing to do. And so this is where the question of length comes in and the content. There is such thing as a one pager. It's just a concept. It doesn't mean anybody has to be able to produce a one pager, but it can be done. And it's especially easy to do for somebody who is a recent graduate. I'm not saying that there aren't people who are recent graduates who already have so much extra experience, professional, volunteer, maybe through clubs, other activities, that they wouldn't struggle to fit everything on the first page. But for the majority of the people, a one pager is appropriate at the beginning of their career. And something that is very common for intermediate, mid-career professionals, even senior, is a two-pager. And if you print it, that's front and back. And if your recruiter printed it, they'd be able to just take it. It's a single sheet of page. That's why it makes sense, because it comes from the idea that it's still a single sheet of page, front and back. Now, is there a fundamental difference between the two? No, there is no fundamental difference between the two. And if you still can't fit in one, then just use one page. Fantastic. But the absolute maximum anybody can go is 2 pages. Now, that can be a struggle, because once you're entering into later stages, at least in mid-career and then some, you're going to have way too much stuff that you can put there. And let's say you're looking at the job listings and you're trying to cherry pick what you can mention so that it's most relevant to this position, and you're still struggling to fit it in which case there are some tips and tricks that you can use. One of the tips and tricks is that it is okay to cut off your information at a certain point. So we go backwards, right? So chronologically in reverse order, most recent positions are there. At the very bottom of your second page, you already have your education and certifications. So at the front, you have your header, you have your name, you have the professional title for this direction that you've chosen, maybe some skills summarized. So you're squeezing yourself from the top of the first page and the bottom of the second page, and you're trying to fill that space in with professional evidence rather, of showing that you've done this. It needs to be not too wordy, so you can kind of condense a little bit through your actual language you use in your bulletin points. But at some point, most people run out of space. So once you go backwards and you start to go up against that education block and you have no more space, you refer people to your LinkedIn. You can say for older positions, please contact me, or you can say for older positions or for extra information, please go to my LinkedIn, and you pop in a link to LinkedIn. So that's how it's normally done. If you can't rephrase things to make them more precise, if you can't reduce the number of bulletin points per position, you're still struggling for space, you send people for elsewhere, like LinkedIn, for more information. And your LinkedIn at that point can be literally an encyclopedia of your life. There is no limit space on LinkedIn. Nobody cares. It's searchable. Your recruiters will be able to search through all the positions. So if you really want to put everything you've ever done, put it on LinkedIn. Do not put it on your resume.
That's interesting. So let's say if I'm at a business conference, I go and I see a company, and they're presenting to me a small pamphlet which has all the details in it, but they have a website as well. So it's wow. This is most the resume. This is a interesting approach actually. So I've created a mini book for myself, but what you're suggesting is like go ahead and create a small sheet which has the required information, but details can get into the LinkedIn, and people who are interested in you, they will go through the LinkedIn and get detailed information about it. That makes total sense because LinkedIn is, and these days people are also using their personal websites, the link tree and all that kind of stuff based on the profession, and GitHub, of course, from the technology side. Amazing, amazing. So having said, so do you think the same thing applies to someone who is at the executive level? Let's say if an executive wants to change from one job to other, they are trying to pick up one company or the other. Do you think the same thing applies to them as well? Or in most cases, what happens is companies reach out to an executive rather than the executive reaching out to the companies, right? That most of the cases I've seen that happening. So and at the same time, I also wanted to know someone who is in the mid career, how would they get promoted or try to bid for a job at an executive level? What is your take using resume again?
I will take the first question first. And this question has to do with, do the same rules apply to an executive resume? So first of all, you don't see too many people requesting executive resumes because usually those positions are being advertised through word of mouth. They come with recommendations, they come with personal experience being recapped about how that person made a difference at the company. And usually what happens is, even if they do have a resume, there is no big rush to edit it down in size. Let's say you came to me with a 5-page executive resume and you said that you were in talks with a particular company for a high-level position. I would say that's fine. Just give it to them. They're going to store it for their records. It's a part of the hiring process to have a resume, but there actually is no need to show that resume around because it's not the resume that gets you the job. It's your reputation that gets you the job. So the second part of the question had to do with how to cross that. So people who have senior roles as subject matter experts, or people that are rising through levels of responsibility that are managing people. So usually they're not the same thing. Once you get to senior positions, you either become a subject matter expert, so you manage knowledge, or you manage people. And that way you have direct reports, and now you have to mentor additional team members and also communicate to them strategy, change the language of these like very nebulous, abstract corporate terms until your team understands what's actually required of them. There is a point at which you would cross to a director level. And that means managing multiple teams. There may be one or multiple directors per department, but it's usually one director, one department. How do you get there? That's the first jump you have to make. And that comes with a significant promotion. Usually you have to really demonstrate that you understand the nuance of what's going on, not just the meaning behind your personal work and not just you taking care of the teams, the projects you're working on, the people, but you need to show that you can have company's interest at heart. It's a difficult place to be in if somebody's considering crossing over to being a director. You will now have to withhold some information from your team because it's not ready to share. And you will have that eagerness of like, I am one with my people. I need to give them the best and the greatest and alert them to things that are coming. But you will now be told things that are just not ready to share, and you're not able to give your team a heads up. So now you have to really understand that you represent the leadership team, that you are advocating for company interests, that you are the chosen representative to speak about the needs of your team without actually being allowed to bring one of them to the meeting yourself. So it becomes a very complicated thing. There's a lot of nuance, there's a lot of dynamics. It's a very different level of responsibility. If this is something that's for you, you would already be acting that way as a senior person. You will distinguish yourself without really putting your mind to it. Usually when these promotions happen is because they're well deserved. And sometimes director is being hired and they do want you to have been already a director elsewhere, because you need the proven track record that you can function at this very different level of responsibility in this different environment. Now, at some point, if there are promotions beyond that level, from director to VP, from VP to the C level, and so on and so forth. And it's not that different from being a director. It's just increasing level of responsibility and taking on things, really proving yourself, and allyship within the leadership team. You need them to really understand that you're there, that you're helpful, that you can put company interests ahead of any other considerations. But at the same time, you're balancing that, because you're saying, I'm not too different from my team. I was just there. I'm recently there, and I'm advocating for them. So it's hard to be in those positions. It's incredibly rewarding for people that enjoy that level of responsibility. But how do you make it there? One step at a time is how you make it there. From senior to director is the first jump you make. And then you seek mentors within the rest of the leadership team, because it's a new world. You're playing by different rules, and you will be surrounded by people that want to help you succeed, and you start talking to them more so than anything else if you're really heading for the top.
That's very detailed explanation. You kind of covered all kinds of career milestones in anyone's career. Thank you so much for that, Lana. So I've got last but one question which is coming up to me as you as you were speaking. What is the so because things because you mentioned that the C level people get selected from the network, or you already know who is that kind of person, right? So what is the role of networking in one's career, especially specifically when you're in the mid career zone? Do you think the, or maybe the someone who is freshly starting, so what exactly is the purpose of networking according to you?
I'm so glad you brought up networking. And the one word to describe kind of the point of it all, and how important it is, it's the same word. I'm going to repeat it 5 times. Crucial, 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 and crucial. So sometimes people don't know what it is. Do it anyway. Start talking to people. You don't see the value in it. Start talking to people. I have the same advice for pretty much any situation that you bring to me. I feel uncomfortable. I don't know how to do it. I don't see the value in it. Do it anyways. Because, so here's the situation is, let's say two people, they're two professionals, one networks and one doesn't. Can I guarantee that networking will get you some extra special information, knowledge that you cannot get otherwise? No, I cannot guarantee you that, but you're 100% not going to get it if you're not networking. That I can guarantee you. If you're just sitting there with your own thoughts and the same 5 people that you know, your favorite coworkers, and again, networking doesn't mean going to big fancy conferences. The idea of networking is it's a part of the journey of bettering yourself, and it's you sharing knowledge. Anything you're allowed to share. Do not share anything you're not supposed to be sharing outside of your job description or department, but anything you're sharing about your experience, or the cause that you've taken on by working at this company. So different people relate on a very human level, and you could say that, hey, you also have this job. What is it like for you? Do you like it? Are you having a good time? I can't balance everything. How do you do it? Did that conversation just bring value to your life? I don't know, but you get better at asking these questions. I would really remind people that, small talk is fantastic and all. Use it in the first, maybe second sentence, but then ask what you're really trying to ask. It's sometimes difficult, and you have to practice on it. I will be hosting networking sessions for people who hate networking, and I might actually call it that this year. And it's the idea that you demystify what it is, and almost to the point where I'm going to get a group together and have them chat with each other and then say, guess what? You just networked. So what it is communicating with other people, where the subject matter doesn't have to be the specifics of your job, but it has something to do with your job and you as a professional. You could be discussing how well something is going career-wise. You could be discussing how well something is going in the industry. You could just be trying to make a friend. As long as you keep it professional, there's some some lack of the requirement for this is that you're trying to be nice, you're trying to be friendly, but then there's also some kind of gap that you're trying to close. Should you do it even if you don't want to know anything? You should do it anyways, because you cannot 100% know what you don't know. That's kind of the interesting, ironic thing about it, is the more you know, the more you realize that you don't know everything. And so sometimes you strike a conversation, you start talking to a person, and you're like, oh yeah. And secretly you're thinking, I couldn't care less. I'm good. I'm good. I had a full day. I peopled so much today, and now I have to talk to you. But you know what? You never know what interesting thing they're going to tell you. Maybe they themselves cannot answer any of your questions or bring you value, but just knowing them or them introducing you to somebody else, like there's so much unexpected that can happen from making these connections. It's really no different from having a number of acquaintances. So let me explain this based on how, I guess, the friends circle works. You have a family, your closest, tightest friends, people that are there reliably for you. They will sit with you in the hospital. They will hold your hand if you're sick. They will pick up medicine for you, from the pharmacy if you can't go outside. Not everybody in your life is like that, right? And sometimes you encounter a person that will just openly declare that it's close friends or nothing. But you're forgetting that it's good to know people. It's just really good to know people, because you don't know when you're going to need, like, let's say right now I'm planning a webinar and I'm asking my friends, is like, do you want to come? Okay. Do you know somebody else who can come? Okay. If I didn't feel comfortable asking that question, there would definitely be zero chance of reaching somebody beyond my friend. So it's not even about the immediate, like, yes, you can get some information or maybe some small favor, help, knowledge, advice from those people. It's everything else that you get access to, because for every one person you've just entered their portion of the entire network, right? And the more you do that, the better it gets. Add the people on LinkedIn, ask them the questions. I love networking in person because I'm not afraid to talk to people. If you feel uncomfortable, make it a point for yourself to ease yourself into talking to strangers. It doesn't even have to be about work. If you're practicing the skill and a friend, let's say you're standing next to a friend and somebody else walks by and they're like, oh, that's Susan. You should meet Susan. Don't immediately go like, oh, just say hi, be polite, how are you, Susan? What's going on? How do you do? If it's appropriate in that moment to ask, what do you do for work? And pay attention, make a note that some people will not be immediately in this, in the same industry as you are either in or looking to get into, or have the title that you have or trying to get, but it might be relevant enough to raise your curiosity. Sometimes we just don't know what we don't know. And it's hard to be curious about some part of the job market out there that you just don't know. And somebody may say, listen, this is what I do. And you start thinking, oh my goodness, I haven't even thought about that. I really was set to go for the next obvious role, but let me research this. It's difficult to guarantee or to predict what comes out of networking, but I can tell you that when you, like, maybe it doesn't matter today, but when you get to that point, when you're looking for work and you're like, who can I ask? Well, let's say I need something and I can't ask my mom. I mean, I can ask and she'll be like, honey, I don't know. That's not the kind of job or I don't even know anybody, who can answer. And let's say I have my mom and 3 friends and neither of them know. Does this mean I stop now? I Googled, I didn't find answers immediately. I asked my mom and 3 friends. I didn't get the answer immediately. If you don't have that circle of friends that are maybe not your closest friends, maybe they're acquaintances, maybe they're professional connections, you need that group to be able to ask them questions. And maybe you don't have one today, but tomorrow you'll have a question. And, now you have somebody to ask. And if they don't know, they direct you to somebody they know. So it's an investment into, kind of decreasing the risk. The more knowledge, the more general people that you can tap into in the time of need. So you're preparing yourself for the future. You're lowering the risk of being so isolated that you literally have nobody to talk to. And there's so many people that come to me and say that I simply have nobody to ask. So then they ask me and I say, you know what, I'm going to ask around on your behalf because I maintain those relationships. I constantly ask people questions. I'm not scared to ask those questions. So what? They don't know. They say no, whatever. I ask the next one. I ask the next one. I post it on LinkedIn. Maybe somebody actually will answer. And then you're like, oh, little crumb of information. Now I can go further and further and further. But if you just cut yourself off from that group entirely, you don't even have anybody to ask.
Wow, that's very detailed explanation on the impact of why one should get into, networking. Networking, not the job networking. I mean, personal networking. Networking is a realm in IT, right? Anyways, I really appreciate your time today. You have given us fantastic information. There is a lot to learn from this podcast for people who are, who are serious about their career. But then, before I let you go, I've got one final question for you. Lana, give me 5 tips. How do I impress my hiring manager during my interview process?
All right, let's do this. Number one, interview is a two-way conversation. Don't just sit there. Don't be a victim. Participate. Ask questions back. The more you act like it's a two-way street, the better this will go. Two, know something about the company. Did you at least go to their website? Do you have any idea of what they do? Just because they gave you an interview, you didn't just walk from the street. Please research something about them. Treat them as a client with you being the service provider. It's all about them and the problem they're trying to solve. They're hiring for a reason. They need this person. There's some situation, and they need this person to come in and solve it for them. 4, maintain eye contact. I cannot say this enough. This is especially difficult for people that went through all of their schooling remote, are used to turning off the camera. Do your best, but if you spend all your time just looking at the ceiling, that's probably not the greatest. Just do your best, but try to maintain eye contact. And finally, trust your gut and know your worth. They will do what's best for them in this interview. You need to know what's best for you. Understand that not all jobs are going to be for you, no matter how desperate you are to get this job. If your spidey senses are tingling, maybe this is not a place to be.
Wow, thank you. Thanks a lot, Lana. I really appreciate, once again, I really appreciate your time, and thanks a lot for educating us with your experience, how to ace in our careers. We have covered multitude of information today. I hope people will learn from it. I certainly learned a great deal of information today. And I will put your contact information, your LinkedIn profile, your website, everything in the description so that if people who are interested can reach out to you. And again, thanks a lot for coming in, and have a great day. Namaskar.
Thank you so much for having me. That was super fun.
See you later.
Thank you.